Well, thanks so much for joining. This podcast is really it's just for me to learn as much as possible. As you know,
Cool.
transition, you and I were cutting our teeth early on as coaches together, with the big green, and just have, kind of gone through the system, GM, head coach, and then more on the business side now as a CEO. We started this Major League Rugby competition a couple of years ago. And, I'm running the New England franchise of that, the Free Jacks. It's growing so fast. A lot of kids are starting to play, which is awesome. It's changing on college landscapes in some places, right? Which is great to see. It's just a free flowing, such a great game. Like Naismith, right, was a rugby coach who invented basketball because they needed a place to train. So awesome to have you on here. I've been so pumped for this one. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be on with you.
Super uber busy. So great to have you with us. So kind of tell me what you've been up to. Last time I saw you was probably in Hanover in the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Kind of what I loved about everything you were about is winning was really important, but it was more important than that. It was education. And day one, you've always been about that process, and I really love that. And you impressed me when you were here. You were working on a master's as you were on the road all the time recruiting, and you still, every time I saw you, you still were able to have a smile and have a laugh. And I really loved it. Brought so much energy to things. So what's the road been like? What have you been up to?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate those kind words, Alex. I think the energy, I think, is a lot of it, right? I mean, this success takes an element of enthusiasm and grit. It's what I tell my team. And I'm so happy that you picked up on the fact that no matter how busy you are or what your goals are, it's how you present, right? And I presented in sense of enthusiasm throughout my life. That's really carried me through, I think, a lot of ways. And so also that tie of the academic sphere, right? I just think that the educational mission of a school, the extracurricular, in this case, athletics, is critical to that, right? The things that I want my players to become better people, more critical thinkers, healthier in mind and body through our experience. And along the way, my job is to win games, right? But you win because of how you handle all the other stuff. And so that's probably the thing I've liked the best about coaching is I'm super competitive, but I'm actually competitive as a byproduct of how much I enjoy the journey of growth. And so because I see my players growing and trusting and giving so much, I want so much for them. I want to win for them, right? And so I went down to Princeton. In part, I didn't know if coaching was going to be a vocation for me. And so when I got offered the coaching job at Princeton, I thought, what a great way to find out. Right. Go be a head coach. And I know that's risky, right? So many people thought, well, the problem with that is if you don't succeed, you're going to, once you get fired, you can't really recycle. And I don't know why you'd always have to go to the worst, right? Or I could have success. That's the other option, right? And so I went and had a lot of success there and believed in the educational values there and was very careful about where I was going to go from there. And it had to be a place like this. And so here I am at Carolina, just finished year one, and we're much better for the journey we just had.
That's awesome. So, everything you've done, you've won. Like in high school, every sport possible, you probably won a state championship. If I remember, it was like soccer, basketball. You may even been good at tennis.
In tennis, yeah.
Long cobwebs. But then at Dartmouth, you won a few Ivy championships as a player. You crushed your three-pointers. How's your three-point game right now, by the way?
Better than yours.
No way.
It doesn't. I shoot more because I don't want to have to run anymore. So I'm like, now I'm only a shooter. That's all I do.
This is great. And then as an assistant coach at Dartmouth, part of a winning program, led that recruiting, which is fantastic. Princeton hadn't won a lot. You come in, after a year or two, winning everything, right? And now you're at Carolina. You're going to a program that was coming out of a controversy somewhat. To now it's ACC basketball. You won. Yeah, and now it's winning. Winning is really, really important. Right? So this is an amazing journey you've gone on. But now you're kind of in the CEO position as a head coach of a D1 team. And going back to that kind of educator component, like cutting your teeth as a coach, you love coaching. How much of your actual time do you get to spend doing that?
Yeah, you're so right. I mean, I'm basically, you're running a business. You're running a small business, right? And the basketball is
very public facing, right? It's not like you're running a small business that's a restaurant or something. Or
yeah.
Company. This is very like, team makes a mistake, that's on you.
Yeah. And your wins and losses are on the front page.
Yeah.
right? How you treat people is in front of 8,000 people, right? And yeah, so you have to be comfortable with understanding that you're going to be judged one way or the other every minute of every interaction, and to just stay laser focused to your why, right? And that's what I've done. I've stayed laser focused to my why. But yeah, I mean, I think the success comes again, I think, from that grit and enthusiasm that I require of myself and people around me every day. But yeah, the CEO part, man, I got to tell you, Alex, that's all I do. I mean, I'm dealing with a staff of 10. I'm dealing with a team of 12. I'm dealing with a recruiting list of X. I'm dealing with, the budget, and you're dealing with the interactions that you can't delegate. As a CEO, there are elements that you cannot delegate, right? And you know that from all the work you've done, that you don't get to stay in your lane. You don't have a lane, and so you're doing the things that you can't delegate, and while delegating all the things you can.
Right, exactly. And then you have shareholders who are effectively alums and fans, right? Mm-hmm. You have to have relationships and rapport. So how do you work? Like, how do you manage that in your system? What's your system now? Do you just have a staff members kind of doing each bucket, and you're just totally of it all, or do you find that you want to dig in deep into certain areas?
Staffing. I mean, the most important thing you do is acquire people in any industry, right? And so I have a really great staff that I spent a lot of time putting together. And so I've got one on my staff her job is all internal operations. So everything from gear to scholarship checks to housing to travel to all that. And then I have another one on my staff who her job is everything external: alums, donors, fundraising, the community tickets, season ticket holders, all that, right? And then I have assistant coaches, one who's working with our posts, one who's working with our guards, so I certainly give people opportunities to lead in their lane. But yeah, I think I'm responsible for the interconnectedness of all of them. And then the relationships, right? There are a lot of people that want to hear from me, and you can't delegate that. And that's in recruiting and their coaches and their alums and their, the donors. And so a lot of my time is dealing with the relationship part of the job, as well as the interconnecting the dots of all the different people I've allowed to be in their lane and really kill it in their lane.
Yeah. And so with being an assistant basketball coach is probably one of the hardest jobs out there, because you're always on the road. You're expected to coach when you're not on the road. You're always recruiting, long trips in general. That's a really, really tough job. So you're having to manage people who are in the weeds a lot. Do you have time to actually coach and run the team through? Are you running the tactical and strategic flow of how you guys want to play?
Yeah, I would say, Max, that's something you can't delegate. Okay. Right? So that's in my can't delegate category. So for example, if I'm having right now we're in skill development mode, right? Get them a little bit better individually, especially with COVID, and so I've given the people who are working with the guard coach and the post coach, they get to execute, they get to create the workouts, but I broke down all the film and gave them the progression of skill set I wanted to see. Right. And then same thing with practice. I get input, but I create the practice plan behind a closed door. Right. So I think what you emphasize and what you allow is in part who you are, and that can't be delegated. So yeah, definitely the basketball piece I'm heavily involved in. Now the scouting piece. So if I'm trying to beat you, I have an assistant and a video person who's responsible for that scout. I have very little to do with the nuts and bolts of the scout, but the concepts of which ones we're going to focus on, they sort of present me with the information, and I have to synthesize it quickly and decide this is how we're going to go.
The chess master. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
totally love that. Everybody talks about culture and having a good culture. I mean, everybody has culture. It's just the behaviors and what happens every day. How are you defining that? How are you building it? Obviously, it's a new team. You've had a year to kind of scan and feel. How are you doing that?
Yeah, it's the most important thing we do. It's the teams that are the best in talent is hugely important. If you have the best players, you're going to win most of the time. There's not a huge separation at this point between the best player in the country and the 35th best player in the country, right? So who wins is who's got the best culture. And, you have that unique juxtaposition of a coach-led team is never going to be as good as a player-led team, right? But you have to teach players how to lead in a way that fits your personality. right? So you're constantly modeling it, celebrating it, teaching it, holding them accountable to it, asking them to protect it, you know, constantly. So for example, if I walk into the gym and there's somebody sitting in the stands or someone walking by and I say to you, and you were getting shots up, hey, who is that? And your answer was, I don't know. I would be like, okay, great. So stop what you're doing. Let's go say hi. And they learn in the moment that like, we're not our, you know, how we want to handle ourselves is not pick and choose. We want to be this way all the time or whatnot. So I think we address it, we explain it, and then we constantly critique it and constantly lead it. And we want, our motto right now in this program is strong on own, best together. And then our hashtag is in pursuit. And so those culture points are, I want them to understand that a part of our success is me helping them become strong on their own, right? So their own unique journey of becoming better and in pursuit of that. But yet we're going to be our best together, right? And so kind of all of our standards and pillars and foundations are based on those things. Does it help you get strong on your own? Does it help us be best together?
That's awesome. Everything comes back to that. So if you're getting your recovery right and all the other pieces of being a good student and everything else, take care of yourself. Yeah, with the Free Jacks, we're humble, hardworking, have fun. That humble is we're really specific about it. Now that means we're prioritizing our community first. Number one, our team second, then ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're not important. Like we got to take care of ourselves so the team is better, but the team's priorities are above our own.
Totally.
In this endeavor, in this journey, and then the communities, you know, that's above the team, and it has to work that way for us to be successful.
And partly, if like that, I'm telling you, Mags, I think for you is because that's what works for you, right? And I think that's what makes coaching so important. Like if you tried to coach just like me, you wouldn't be as successful, right? And if I tried to coach just like you, I wouldn't be. You have to be authentic to what actually matters to you. And so if you knew that the right way to do it is to care about the group first, but you didn't feel that way, it would never work. So maybe a different person feels like, no, it's actually more important that you are that the individual is most important. That's fine too, as long as it fits, you know, so that they always say that you got to fit your personality, you know, and I think it does in that case.
So this brings up the age-old recruiting question. Are you recruiting talent that you mold into that culture, or are you finding those who already demonstrate, you know, pieces of that culture? Like, how do you go about that?
First thing is the talent, honestly. I mean, I think it's harder to win if you don't have the talent. I find it easier to get the talent to buy into me than to try to get players that aren't good enough across the board to be better than another team. So talent is the first thing. Now, the talent, again, there's not a huge separation. What are you saying?
Love that, because a lot of people are like, oh no, it's just about the environment. You're like, no, you got to have the right horses for the courses. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. And then you can teach. And so if I'm recruiting you and I'm recruiting, you know, Brooke, right, I'm recruiting both of you, and I enjoy talking to you more. And I enjoy your family group more. And I'm going to just start talking to you more, which means I'm recruiting you more. Right. So there's that human element as well. But, and of course, there are the red flags that everybody on this podcast will have and know that you don't recruit those, or I don't, right? And that's partly why I was picky about where I would coach. Now I went from Dartmouth to Princeton to Carolina. Like, no one's feeling bad for me. I get it, right? But I've made that choice that I'm not taking a situation professionally where I'm going to have to take kids or be a part of something that I can't stand behind, right? But yeah, I start with talent and then trust that my job is to transform people into understanding what actually is important.
And you guys actually like write that down? Here are priorities.
Yeah. So yesterday we actually had our team meeting, and how I started it was I said, this is the only time all year, it happens once every year, at this day, is that I present, right? Because coaches don't present, right? Coaches have authentic relationships, right? And they coach, they teach, they interact. But I said, this is the one time all year that I'm going to present, because we have to be clear on what our standards are. And then they're written down, you know, and it's like we went through it word by word, and it was like, you've heard it, you've seen it, and you now own it, right? And then every other time, if there's a slip up or or we celebrate something, that will be because we're still adjusting to them, but at least we know what they are now. Yeah. So we meet with them, be a good teammate. That's number one for us. That's a standard that we care about. And I explain what that means, right? And respect for others, kind of what you had said, just the humility or however you want to word that, right? The third is communication is required. And I talk about what that means. Speak in truths, problem solve face-to-face, those type of things. And then the last one is commitment is expected, and understanding what that means. This is what commitment means to me. Your academic effort, you're engaging in the recruiting process, you commit to sleep and health and nutrition, so be a good teammate, respect for others, communication is required, and commitment is expected. I always say your culture, your kids have to know it. So if you ask them what our standards are and they don't know those four, I haven't done a very good job.
Yeah, that's awesome. So taking a step back, is that something that you guys get on a whiteboard together at the end of last year with the group that's moving forward into the next year, and you kind of whiteboard out what you want the standards to be? Or is it something you take from your amazing experiences in the past and say, this is what this means if I'm going to be a part of this, as a leader of this organization, this is what it's going to be, and then they get ownership because you're handing it to them?
B. Yeah, I would say B. I think it's important that they know what's important to me and how what I believe to be where our success is going to lie. And then the team theme of strong, unknown, best together, they can create the team theme every year, because that might, it could be any number of things, but
we had Light the Way at one point, and Together We Ride, and
exactly. So the team theme, I want them to own and feel like it's something that's going to be their team 46 or whatever team number we are. But yeah, for the standards, it's not a lot of back and forth.
I love that. That's the commitment, that's like choice, right? Effectively make the choices that are right for being a part of this journey together. Respect, having awareness of others probably is a really good definition. What were the other two? Being a great teammate, right?
Be a good teammate. Yeah. So respect your, be accountable to your choices, be on time. That's being a good teammate. Respect each other's differences. That's being a good teammate. Respect yourself enough to give your best. Respect your teammates enough to give your best. That's being a good teammate. Following the dress code, listening.
Know that not everybody's going to play. And
what do they say? Well, I met with the upperclassmen the day before, and I said, I had on my big TV, I had it up there, and it said, freshmen want to play, sophomores want to start, juniors want to score, and seniors want to win, right? And I put seniors want to win in bold, and I said, look at up there. And they kind of looked at it, and I was like, is that true? If that's not true, if the one in bold, seniors want to win, is not true, that changes how I'm going to coach you. And that's okay. You just need to tell me. Yeah. And they all said, yeah, that's true. We want to win. I said, great. That's my job. I'll make sure you win then. Then you have to, here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I completely love that. Our players came up with a couple themes this year, kind of fitting into going back to the humble, hardworking, have fun. And one of them was put your hand up, not out, which I thought was great, right? We're a startup organization, so you got to be gritty. You got to be hungry. Nobody else is going to do it. So you got to get it done, which I totally love.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. Put your hand up, not out.
And then the other one, 1 through 41. Number 1 is our community, then the roster of 40. So was our size of our roster. So, and this was player driven. And then the last one was HAF, which was hard as, you can imagine what the F stood for. Hard as Flintstones.
I love it.
And I think they learned as the year progressed, and we had a great start. We were on the road for the first 5 weeks, right? Obviously, you're New Englander, winners there better than most. And so we were on the road, great win against Rivalry New York. But then the next 4 weeks we're on the road, some tough games, lost last minute, a lot of games. And so tough. And that HAF was kind of turning more into, okay, we need to be more savvy, than just physical and effort with accomplishment. We saw a lot of that. We're going to work really hard and that'll make up for everything else. No, work works, but at the end of the day, we still got to execute. So let's figure out if we can work more effectively, be a bit more savvy. That was an evolution that our team had to go through, which we came in, there's been a bit of a controversy when you came in. Coach had been there for a long time. There was a race issue, I can't even remember. And then how do you manage that now? Coming out of what we've just been through and a world where, wait a minute, we haven't educated ourselves correctly. We effectively had concentration camps in the United States, and we have 400 years of crazy. And like, how are you managing that with your team and your athletes? They know they have a safe place, and we don't have all the answers yet. And
just that. I mean, well said. It was amazing how difficult it was for everybody. And if it wasn't difficult for you, I don't have time for you. You know, and on a staff, I mean, I have only 2 white players, and you know, my whole staff is Black, right? So I basically, the Black community is a huge part of my everyday, right? And and I think my team has appreciated that as a white woman head coach who was absolutely benefited from white privilege in every way, right? For me to be able to say, we have to have actionables, right? So now we're all registered to vote. I mean, all the other things that everybody's doing, right? But also for us to say exactly that, Alex, we don't have the answers. All I know is this isn't okay.
Yeah.
This isn't okay. And dialogue is important, and actionables are important, and listening is important. And so I think but it was remarkable how hard it was, because I felt so bad for maybe, yeah, my lack of awareness growing up. And then I think also the heaviness of having a better understanding of how many people in the Black community have felt for so long, you know? And so I think it's a perfect storm. You have COVID, which completely sucks. You have what I think is a lack of leadership at the very highest level. And then you have full-blown race wars.
Yeah.
It needs to be that bad, almost. Sadly, I think it almost needed to be that bad.
For us to listen and be like, oh, life is actually now a bit shaky.
And we're the country that's most diverse in the whole world, I think. And so this isn't supposed to be easy. No one else is doing it. You know, go to Japan. Everyone looks the same.
Let's celebrate it, and let's
and work through it.
Own our history, right? And teach our history that we don't do a really good job of.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's been hard. I think sports can have a real unifying effect, and it can also have a really divisive effect. And I think we're seeing that.
Yeah, totally. So you're COO coach, effectively as head coach, right? And you're running this big organization. What is a typical day like right now? So players are slowly trickling, are back on campus, but you're not in season. How are you running? Like, what does your day look like so that you can have time with the kids, the family? Like, how do you manage all that? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think it's not as bad as it was at Princeton. I actually think I have way more family time now, in part because the day we can practice more during the day because we have priority scheduling.
Interesting.
Right. And so at a school like this, we've got 16,000 students. There'll be multiple sections of econ. There'll be multiple sections of business. There'll be multiple sections of biology. And so they let the athletes sign up for their classes first, so they can sign up for them where there's an afternoon 3-hour block where they can practice. Right. At Princeton, that didn't happen. And so our practice time was basically 5 to 7:30 every night. And as you know, when you have really young kids, it doesn't matter because 7:30 is the same as midnight. Right. But as my kids have gotten older, with 2 6-year-olds and a 4-year-old, like I didn't want to miss the soccer practice and the things that I wanted to be home for dinner and bath time. Right. And so that part's been better. But it's what makes it, I mean, I have 2 cell phones, not one. I mean, it's just because I'm on one, I'll be on one and then I'll be able to text on the other, you know, so you just it's a very high touch job. Right. And so of course that's going to take time away from your family. But my day-to-day is really, it's always an element of human relationship, which takes time. So whether that's with recruiting and our current team and my staff, all 3 of those constituents get me every day at some level. And then the external community, which is either your alums and donors and ticket holders and all of that, they don't get a piece of me every day because they're a little bit further down in the pecking order in terms of the fully functioning operation that we're part of. And then I have to save time to think, like to plan practice or to do the film breakdown or to, you know, as you would say, the tactical part of the job. Right. And so, you know, I'm fortunate enough that I have a scheduler one of her main jobs is basically to manage my schedule. And so it would be like having a meeting with Mags, but it's just a meeting with myself. Yeah. And she knows that, you know, whatever, is that from 1 to 2? Is that from 11 to 12? She knows that there's a meeting with, you know, meeting with myself every day. She's able to make sure that happens. And that's been really helpful. That's something I've learned with having now more people needing me all the time.
The hardest part about that though, for me, is the transitioning, because it's really hard, like going from fighting fires or being on intense human interactions, and suddenly being like, well, now is the one time I have in the day to plan, think, brainstorm, be creative. That transition sometimes is difficult. Like even just like sometimes I have to dig into a spreadsheet, and I love digging into spreadsheets, right? Especially when the numbers work. But just having the ability to transition, I think, is probably an area that I need to continue to work on, because it is the part of your brain you're using for this is different than the part of the brain where I gotta think about the long term and digest and catch my breath. And those little transitions is a work on for me for sure.
Good point. And I think I'm actually better at that, I think, than most. What I'm not, but there are the things that, for example, if I'm looking at our budget, I'm not as great at numbers. And I know with what your job is, you have to do that a lot. So that actually, that has to be scheduled for me. That has to be like on Tuesday at 10 a.m. because I won't be able to transition into budget and then transition out. So most other things, if I know I'm planning for our opening team meeting, I can do that right after, 3 straight recruiting calls, but I wouldn't be able to then, like you said, transition as well if it was something that it takes more time for me to think through it. So I put that in its own entity, really.
I love that. You ever just say, F it, clear my schedule, I'm going to give myself a day to just think? Do you ever call email your schedule and be like,
yeah, we try this time of year to say Fridays can be a good day, but as a parent, and I know everyone on the podcast who's parents, they sort of get this too, that you can't have it all, right? And so for me, if I'm going to have a whole day where I think there could be real value to that, but it means it's also a whole day I'm not with either of the two things that pull the most from my time, right? So I think I probably am not good enough at that. I'm better at really finding an hour and then finding that to be rejuvenating.
Yeah, that's awesome. Would you have time to work out? Like, how do you fit that in?
Yeah, every morning. Yeah, I think, and here's what I'd say to that. I think for, again, all these people that are listening in that are high level leaders, it's just, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And so sometimes for yourself, it's a glass of wine at 6 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. And other times it's a long run. I mean, everyone has their own version of reading a good book but I think gone are the days, I think it's a good thing. Gone are the days where like you brag about, like in college, we remember this, we'd study, you'd have all-nighters in college, either studying or partying, or both, I think gone are those days where that's something that you brag about. Right. And I think especially as a leader of other people, I don't brag about how hard I'm working. I actually would rather spend time making sure that I'm strong and healthy for myself so that I can be strong and healthy for you.
I'm not up until 4 a.m. every morning, then back up at 6 a.m. Yeah. The idea of bragging about that is definitely gone. Right?
Yeah. It's just, or like, oh my gosh, I worked all day and I didn't get home till 9 o'clock. It's like, there are days where you don't get home till 9 o'clock. Me too. Nobody cares, right? But it's that I got home at 9 o'clock, and so tonight I'm going to have to just go to bed right away because I didn't get a workout in yesterday, so I got to get up a little early and get my workout in. Yeah. Like, I think it's almost like gone are the days where you're guarding your desk and your success is based on how many hours you logged. It's really how well you're able to take care of yourself amongst the many different tasks you have so that you have enough energy and health to take care of other people.
Very well said. I completely love that. Social media is obviously different now than when we were athletes.
Oh, thank God.
Days. Yeah. Like, so social media is now here, and you got players, you got yourself. Like, how does that play in a part in everything now? Like, how are you educating your players for the use of social? And many times they're just way more savvy than us.
Yeah. We had a really good conversation. We had one of our alums does a really great talk on branding, and we had her come on Zoom, and coaches signed off so that she could really get after it, but did a really great job empowering them to understand that their brand, social media is actually branding, right? It's free branding. So it's separate from the fact that it's a news search engine for some. I think for this age, oftentimes it's the branding environment. And so I think we tried to do it from a positive side instead of if you do this, then this. It was more, this is, you need to be your biggest cheerleader. What are words that you would use to describe yourself? Do your post reflect that, right? Or what are, and then we also tried to make sure they understand that when you're on a team, you lose some individuality. Yeah. And so your post reflects me, and my posts reflect you. And I won't embarrass you, and I hope you won't do that for me. And if I ask you to take something down, do it. and know that I'm not going to then tag you on our university page that has thousands of followers. I'm not going to tag you and send people to your account, you know. But I think the life of comparison, which is the life of social media, is really a hard place to grow up. And so we try to look at it. I'm trying to help them see it as a place of positive branding of yourself.
That's so healthy. I love that. And then kind of the big picture of sports, how do you see, like, especially WNBA, that evolution? Where's the WNBA going?
Yeah, you know, I think they're a fascinating study, right? And this is your world, so you know it more than me, but to build something from the ground up and to get, is it viewership? Is it finance? Is it butts in the seats? Is it TV? Like, what is it that promotes the league the best, right? And is it a grassroots? Is it, and then what season do you play it? Where you compete less with some of the other, I mean, there's so many different things. I think fortunately the WNBA, the level is so good, that the players are so good, that the more that we can ink people into seeing it, the better people are going to feel about it. But we have a love obsession with basketball in our country. People are obsessed with it. And there's always basketball on the men's side. And so it's a hard space to break into. Right. But I think the way they're doing it now with making you feel like, you know, the women, is helping. Mm-hmm. And they have an obligation to that, as do your players, that to recognize that we're not just going to watch you because of the sport. We want to feel like we're rooting for you.
It's the characters, right? It's the conflict, it's resolution. You know, storytelling 101. That's really what it is. Okay, so
totally.
let's stay behind the characters, because there is the drama of those characters. And they're either aspirational or they're relatable, but either way, you know, I want more. I want to see more. And like with the Red Sox, it's not forever. It wasn't about the players necessarily. It was about Fenway, right? That's the star, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just what is that star going to be? And something. I think they're doing a really good job of continuing to evolve a very difficult sports entertainment climate. Because you're right. Is it about butts in the seats? Okay, then that's a live event play. That's going to be different than, you know, media broadcast, that kind of thing. Or is it purely just creating a brand that has other things around it that then so yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens as things move forward, especially with betting now being, you know, loosened up in a lot of states. How's gaming going to play a part of that? How's esports?
That's the huge one, right? I think that's what the professional lacrosse, for example, is doing. Is they're basically they're recognizing that there's a lot of money to be made in sports betting, and people are betting on like dogs, you know, and so they will absolutely bet on female athletes. You know, if you just give them the reins to do that. So I think there's a real avenue in that way as well.
It's just the data's clean. There's integrity behind it. It's done in a safe environment, and it'll continue to grow for sure. Mm-hmm. Rapid fire questions for you, quick ones. Favorite book?
Most recently, I love the book Small Great Things.
Small Great Things.
By Jodi Picoult, who's a great writer, as you know. It's about the race relations really in our country. So she tackles very difficult issues. And this one was particularly about, it was a Black labor and delivery nurse from Yale. And she had to take care of basically a white skinhead's kid in the ICU. And it's not a true story, but it feels true. And it talks about the biggest moment in the book that I found was really profound was, so this Black couple, she and her husband were in a hotel lobby of a very nice hotel. And some couple came up to them and gave them their keys, assuming they were the valet drivers. And, you know, when you and Brooke are at the hotel lobby, never has someone assumed you are a valet driver, right? So it was things like that in that book that really let you into really this is how the race relations feel to people in our country and how real they are. So that's a really profound book for what we're going through right now. Okay.
Winning at all costs, losing the right way. I already answered that.
Oh gosh, yeah, losing the right way. Know your why.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Something you've always wanted to do but haven't yet. What would that be?
Vacation in Bora Bora. On one of those huts in the water.
Okay, I love that. Favorite movie lately?
You know, I don't watch movies really, I have to say. I watched Ozark. Is that considered a movie?
Is that a document? That's a Netflix thing?
It's amazing. You haven't seen Ozark? Max, thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, I'm on it. Brooke's on call this weekend, so maybe at night I will do that.
Yes, it's so good. It's with Jason Bateman. It's amazing.
Board meeting.
But I can't tell you the last movie I saw. I'm not exaggerating. Like,
Same.
20 years ago?
I don't think Brooke and I have been to a theater. I took Piper to Frozen and we walked out after.
Oh yeah, we went to Frozen.
Piper's like, it's not for me. Can we go down? I was like, we'll stay for 5 minutes. She's like, all right. And then 5 minutes, she's like, not for me, Dad. Let's go. It's like, great. Like,
Oh, lucky you. No.
Just wants to be Daniel Tiger and Peppa Pig for now. That's great. I'm happy with that.
Peppa Pig. It's such an annoying voice, though. I'm so tired of it.
So annoying. And just the music behind it. Now the boys totally love it. I was just like,
Totally. It's like chalkboard.
Hey, so what can we expect from the Tar Heels this year?
A lot of enthusiasm. I think there's we have a top 10 class in the country in the freshman group. We've got a good good leadership core back. We actually only have, I've gotten 12 new kids in a year. It's crazy, but just lots of enthusiasm. It's an eager group. It's a talented group. It's a really inexperienced group in some ways. So we'll have to be enthusiastic about it.
That's great. I love it. If I would love to play for you. You're just fantastic.
I'd love to play for you too.
So last question I ask everybody, if you're in charge of the Free Jacks today, what are you focusing on day to day? That's a very difficult question.
Probably what you already are, which is the culture that you have in place is going to be what sells.
Yeah. If we leave it every day, like if that's who we are, then it will.
Like, think about it. The Patriots, whether you hate them or like them, based on their culture, they're sellable. The Cowboys, their culture, it's sellable, right? It's almost like the Lakers, right? Even the Bucks with the Greek Freak. Yeah. So I think the way your guys buy in and embody your culture is what sells.
I love it. Thank you so much.